Hi, welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be attempting to replace my rear near side wheel bearing. Okay, so the wheel bearing that is starting to rumble is in here, behind there, and it was picked up as an advisory on the last MOT a year ago. So I've got a week to change that before the next MOT. So what I've decided to do, rather than pay for a garage to replace the wheel bearing, which would probably cost about 400 to maybe 500 pounds, I thought I'd buy a second-hand hub and hub carrier and strip this down, press out the old bearing using a hydraulic 10-ton press that I've bought, and then try to de-rust this. So I'll use a sort of a wire brush, one of these kind of wire brush things on the drill, and I'm also going to try doing a bit of electrolysis to try and see if we can actually remove this rust chemically by putting it into a solution of sodium carbonate and applying an electrical current. It might work, it might not, but I'll give it a go. It'd be nice to take this back to nice shiny metal and then give it a spray with some silver paint or something to make it look like new. I was originally going to just buy a whole new hub and then press in a new bearing, but just this piece, just this hub carrier piece, or knuckle joint as it's called, these are not cheap. I looked online. Here are a couple of screenshots now showing the sort of prices that places are charging. Well over £300, maybe over £500, depending on where you go, just for this, and that doesn't include the bearing or the actual hub, which is this piece here. I picked this item up second-hand on eBay for about £50. It's in a bad shape. It's very worn, very rusty. The disc guard here is pretty buckled and damaged. I might be able to salvage this, or I might just remove this and throw it away, possibly refit the one that's on the car, or maybe even just do away with the disc shield. I mean, it's there to protect the disc from stones and dirt that's kind of flying up, but I've got the grooved discs. They throw off any water or dust that's on them, so I'm not sure. I'll have a think about that. Might actually just opt to do without the disc shield. These old Handbrake shoes here are very worn. They'll be thrown. The linkage is pretty rusty, so I'll strip all that off, throw away anything that I don't want, and get this down to just the hub carrier and the bearing and this, which is the hub. And this actually, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's quite a bit of play in that. So if I rock that, you can just about see the movement there. So this bearing in here is worn. It's certainly not suitable for swapping it as is onto the car. There's no point in replacing a worn bearing with another worn bearing. So I've bought a new bearing. That was £28. It's a Bearmac bearing, bought on eBay. Other brands are available, but you'd normally pay sort of 30, maybe £50 for a new bearing. I did look on Euro car parts just to see what they're charging. Here's a screenshot. Quite expensive, okay, but that bearing does come with another hub nut and another circlip, which I don't think the one that I've bought does. So yeah, you just got to shop around a little bit, just see what's available and what's included in the various kits. So this one here, as you can see, is pretty rusty. It's pretty flaky here. This needs a real good going over with a wire brush and a bit of electrolysis to try and get rid of this corrosion all over it. But I reckon I can clean this up and restore this back to nice shiny metal. Give it a coat of paint and it will look almost like new. Okay, so I'm going to now start stripping this down, and I'll see what we end up with after I've removed all of this, and I'll then put it into the hydraulic press and try and remove this hub by pressing it out from the other side, and then we'll look at getting rid of the rust. Okay, so that's the handbrake shoes removed, and the adjuster, the springs, and this kind of weird lever thing, and the clips as well. There are two of those with these kind of pins. These clips do cause a bit of a headache when changing the handbrake shoes. There is a bit of a trick to getting these back in. If you want to see that, I won't show it now, but I have a video on my rear brake upgrade where I changed the handbrake shoes as well and changed the disc, and I show how to refit these, okay, because it's very easy to spend hours trying to get these back on. There's an easy way to do it. Okay, so watch that video. What I'll probably also do is, when I reassemble this hub and refit my handbrake shoes, I'll do a separate video just purely about the handbrake shoe fitment, because what I'm finding is people are watching the long brake upgrade video, and the YouTube analytics show that everybody is fast forwarding to the bit where I do the handbrake shoes. So it would make sense for me to pull that out for a separate video, save everybody having to search through the longer video for it. Okay, so what's next? So this cable here, this is the wheel speed sensor. Okay, so there is a little Torx screw there. Now I've heard that this can be quite difficult to undo. It can get a bit rusted in there, so I shall very carefully try and loosen that, and if it doesn't move I'll put some WD-40 on it. But then the wheel speed sensor needs to be removed, which is that little black bit there, and you can actually see the magnetic ring, this darker sort of ring here with all these kind of little segments on it. I don't know if it's lots of little magnets or what, I don't know, but it's some sort of magnetic ring that goes round, and then the speed sensor there detects the rotation, and yeah, you can see it moving there. So that moves, and the magnets move past the speed sensor. So I'm going to try and undo this now and somehow pull out that speed sensor, and then the next thing after that is to try and get this disc shield off, which is held on by a couple of Torx bolts from this side. So hopefully I can get lined up onto those with this hub in place. If not, then this will have to be removed later when this has already been pressed out. We'll see. Okay, so this speed sensor bolt has actually undone really easily. Much easier than I thought it was going to be. I've heard of these actually snapping off before, but it's just a Torx screw there. So now, somehow we get that out. I don't know quite how actually. Let's see if we can get a screwdriver in. I think I'll have to stop filming No, it is moving. It is moving. Okay, there we go. So what I did is I very carefully just bashed this bit very, very gently, just using a small hammer and a screwdriver just to push that up, and then managed to get a screwdriver in here to loosen that, and that just pulls out. There we go. Now these are the cause of a lot of problems. Okay, so these speed sensors, these magnetic wheel speed sensors, if one of these fails, then it messes up your whole terrain response system. It can mess up the anti-lock braking system. You'll get a whole load of errors, and all along it's one of these sensors. Now, I was going to throw all these bits in the bin, but this sensor actually, I have no idea if it's good or not, and I don't even know how much it costs to buy a new one of these, but I might keep this. It actually looks quite clean and quite good condition, so I think I'll keep that just in case one of my sensors ever plays up. My new diagnostics tool that I bought, the new Autel diagnostics tool, does actually allow checking of the wheel speed sensors, so you can actually see if one of them is failing. Okay, right. Now let's see if I can get this disc shield off, and then it will be hydraulic press time on the bearing. There's also this bush, well, it's not a bearing, it's this bush here, which is looking pretty sorry for itself. This bush actually has an outer ring which is now so rusted that it's kind of absorbed into the rest of the metal, so that all needs pushing out. I've got a new one of those to put in, so hopefully I can press that out with its outer ring, which is very corroded. This middle bit here must be aluminium, the outer bit's steel, and then a black rubber sort of sandwich there, and then this sort of aluminium piece which hasn't rusted. But I've got a new one of those, bought that on eBay for about £10, so I'll change that over. That's the trailing arm lower outboard rear bush. Okay, so that's where the suspension arm. There are 3 suspension arms, 2 transverse arms, front and rear transverse arm that go out from there towards the centre of the car, and then this one here, which actually probably goes that way, off to the chassis towards the front. Okay, and then the shock absorber strut goes in here. Brake caliper on there. Okay, right, let's try and get this off. Okay, so I've constructed my new 10-ton hydraulic press here. And then I took the entire hub unit here, hub carrier with hub and back plate, and I put that in there, and I've managed to carefully free up the hub. Okay, so there are a couple of things that I want to mention here. First of all, the back plate, which is held on by a couple of Torx bolts here, is very difficult to remove, almost impossible to remove with this in place. I don't know how you do it actually, because this is one continuous circular piece. This piece here, I think, is welded to this piece. I'm not sure, but the issue that I found is I couldn't get lined up on these bolts properly, because with the hub there I just couldn't get a straight line there for my socket set and Torx bit to get at those. Somebody did suggest on the Facebook group going in through this hole here, which would allow a better lineup, which is a good idea, but I do still wonder how this would be removable. Even if these bolts here were removed, you're not going to be able to take this off with the hub in place. The issue then is that when you put it in the press, then sort of bits of chunky bits of steel like this, which you can carefully kind of stand up, these pieces here are then pressing on here, which was starting to bend that. Okay, so with that in the press like so, with the pieces of metal under here, I then pressed down on this piece here, which is the hub, so not on the bearing but just on the hub, and managed to get it to move down by about 5mm. And what I did then was I just took one of these spacer pieces, one of these mandrels, I actually put that in like that and then lifted the hub up, just held it in my hand and hammered that a couple of taps with a club hammer, and the hub came free. Now what has happened is the hub has come out, but it's got the outer race of the wheel bearing, or it's the outer outboard race, has come off with the hub. You can actually see the ball bearings there inside. So what I'm going to do now is try to remove this. Now I have heard of people having to cut this off with a Dremel tool. I'm going to try to get a kind of a puller, like a 3-leg puller on there, and try and remove that. It might work, it might not. I've also seen people use a special bearing puller which sort of clamps around there and pulls that off. So that's the next job, is to try and remove that. This bearing here, what's left of it, it should be held in by some kind of circlip. There should be a circlip around here. I'm not seeing the end of it, but if there is a circlip, I'll have a dig around in here with a little screwdriver and we'll see what I can find. If there is a circlip, I'll pick that out, and then this can safely be put sort of on here and the bearing pressed out down through there. Okay, so that's what I'll do next, and we'll see if we can get this fully cleaned up, and I can now get at these bolts here, these Torx screws, machine screws there, loosen those off, get the back plate off, and then once the bearing is out, I'll push out this other bush there, and then this is ready for derusting. Okay, so now that the hub's out of the way, I can get at these back plate retaining screws, which actually weren't that tight. I just couldn't get a proper line up to them earlier. All 4 of them came loose quite easily using a normal kind of ratchet and Torx bit. you go. There's the back plate. In a pretty bad shape actually. This is quite badly corroded. I think I might see if I can buy some more back plates or buy another back plate, certainly for this side. Probably have to do the bearing on the other side at some point soon. So there's one rusty back plate. Now we can get at this hub carrier. Now that this is a lot clearer, I can actually put that in the press and get that bearing out. There's one of the little pins that is for the clip that the Handbrake Shoes use, and if you look carefully you can actually see the gap then in the circlip. Okay, so unfortunately the circlip doesn't have little holes on the end for circlip pliers, but it is actually slightly angled at the end there. The sort of the split in it is at an angle, so I can get a screwdriver there and hook that out and then press out the remains of the bearing. Right, there's the circlip. Just used a small screwdriver to just hook that out. Okay, so that's the bearing pressed out. Let's have a look at that. That came out fairly easily. We can see the magnetic ring on that side there, and then the ball bearings inside the actual bearing unit. As well as the bearing, I need to press out the trailing arm bush. That came out, leaving its outer ring in place, but luckily I managed to then press that out. An alternative would have been to have hacksawed a cut in it and then pulled it out, but I managed to get that out fairly easily using the hydraulic press with one of the adapters on the end of the ram. So that's everything now removed from the hub carrier. It is now ready to be de-rusted using electrolysis. So my plan is to submerge the hub carrier in a solution of sodium carbonate. These metal bars on the side are sacrificial anodes, so they will be connected to positive, and the rust should transfer from the rusty items across onto the metal bars. So now let's fill the box with warm water and pour in a bottle of sodium carbonate powder, let that dissolve, and then I'll connect up the battery charger, positive connected to the metal bars on the sides and negative connected to the actual item that we want to de-rust. Turn on the power and we'll see what happens. You can see here that the rust has sort of turned to a kind of black, flaky substance, which is actually coming off quite easily. I just need to really get a wire brush on that and remove all of the loose bits of debris on the hub carrier. I'm going to brush that all off and hopefully we should end up with something nice and shiny. So, after a bit of wire brushing, we have a hub carrier which is fairly free of rust and actually looks almost like a brand new item. Difficult getting in with the wire brush to these recesses, but see if I can get a bit more of that out, but I think that is very good and good enough to paint with some silver hammerite paint and put back on the car. You can even read the Land Rover logo. Amazing. Very, very impressed with the electrolysis. That's a really, really useful and easy way to de-rust car parts, and you can use it on old tools and all sorts of rusty items. Bring them back to bare metal, give them a coat of paint, good as new. Yeah, very, very pleased with that. Right, so next thing to do, get the new bearing pressed in, get this new bush pressed in, and then carefully press the hub into the bearing, as well as fitting the back plate first. Back plate has to go on first, then press the hub in to the new bearing, and we're ready to start fitting it to the car. Okay, so I've given the hub carrier a coat of silver hammerite paint just to make it look a bit better. I've put some tissue in here to sort of avoid getting any paint inside the bearing housing. Also made sure I didn't get any in here and in there either, anywhere where the fit is a bit of a tight fit. I don't really want to have any issues due to a coat of paint making things even tighter. So that has been sprayed up and is looking really nice. What I'm now going to do is get the back plate, clean that up and give that a coat of black paint to make that look nicer as well. Okay, so I've given the hub carrier a coat of silver paint and I've painted this back plate with gloss black, slightly flexible plastic coat paint. This is hammerite paint because it's cast iron. This is pressed thin steel, so I just wanted a sort of a paint coating that wouldn't flake off if it got hot or bent at all. Those are currently sheltering from the rain on the front seat of my car whilst the paint dries. Next thing to do is to remove this, which is the inner race. I may have referred to it as the outer race. It's not actually, it's the outboard inner race of the bearing, which when you push this out, this will stay behind. Okay, so this is another old hub carrier, and this is what you're left with. The best way to push out this is not actually to use a hydraulic press, because you buckle the back plate. When I tried that, it damaged the back plate so badly that I had to then get another complete hub unit on eBay to get a better back plate, which is the one that I've sprayed black. So when I dismantled this one, what I did is I just used this, which is an adapter from my hydraulic press, just pop that in there, sort of with the hub carrier kind of around it, and just hit that a couple of strikes with a club hammer. Didn't take very much at all. A couple of firm bashes on there, and this drifted out and came out. Now it will come out with this attached, so now I need to remove this. And I've tried heating this with a small blowtorch that I've got, by putting that sort of kind of like so, and then heating under here. I saw a video on YouTube of somebody doing that. They actually had an oxyacetylene torch rather than a blowtorch, but they heated this whilst turning this, and the ring just dropped off because it expanded when it got hot. Now I tried that and it didn't work. Now obviously not enough heat. I'm slightly reluctant to get this too hot, because if this warps at all, then it's going to cause a wheel vibration, which is just going to be really annoying. I have to do the whole thing all over again to replace that. So what I'm going to do instead is get my angle grinder and just put a cut in here, and then try and hit this with a cold chisel to split this. This is quite brittle, this bearing in a race material, this hardened steel. It's quite brittle steel. So I'm hoping if I just kind of carefully cut into that, maybe sort of 2 cuts in an X shape without damaging this at all, or without cutting into here, just very carefully cut across here, not all the way through, just through enough to kind of strike it with a cold chisel, obviously with some safety glasses on. This apparently will then split and break off, so let's give that a go and see if it works. I did try using a bearing puller on here. I bought a bearing puller kit from eBay or from Amazon, and just tried sort of pulling there. I even made some little cuts with my Dremel tool to allow the thing to grip and pull upwards. It didn't work, it wouldn't budge. I then tried pulling underneath this lip here, and that just broke bits of metal off. So this is on pretty tight, so I'm hoping that I can shatter that and break it away without damaging this face here. Right, so I have been attacking this with the angle grinder. Removing this is hard, okay, quite difficult. A lot of people say, oh, it's easy, you just cut it and whack it, and you know, maybe in a proper workshop, you know, in a vise on the bench or something like that, but I'm doing this outside here. Okay, in my trusty workmates here. What I've done, I've used my cordless angle grinder, obviously goggles and gloves, and I've put a couple of cuts into there, and you can actually just about see there is actually a little crack forming. So I've put a couple of cuts at various angles in a sort of a cross, and then I've put that in and given it a bash. Now the tricky thing that I found is making sure that I didn't cut too deep so that I don't damage this face. So where I've hit that with a cold chisel, that you can just about see there's a little crack there, and this actually, I'll be careful because these splinters of metal are razor sharp, that's actually turning now. So I can probably get some gloves on and just wind that off, or just smash it apart carefully. That, I reckon that'll come off now. But that was quite difficult to do. I'm sure with the right tools it's a lot easier, but you don't have to cut sort of like that. You want to cut in a cross formation. Otherwise, if you cut like that, you're going to end up cutting into this metal of the hub here and here. There's just not enough room. Maybe with a little Dremel or something you could probably cut a little vertical cut like that, but I opted for the kind of cross pattern, and then a couple of whacks with the cold chisel, and it's actually cracked the metal. So I'm going to get my gloves back on now and try and sort of see if I can wind that off. Okay, that's off now. Just put my gloves on and just very, very carefully work that off. Now this is, I don't know if it's stainless steel or hardened chrome steel or something like that, but it's razor sharp and very brittle. Like bits are sort of breaking off, so thick gloves, absolutely essential. There's some really nasty sharp splinters of steel were coming off that. That is going to go straight in the bin. Right, don't want to see that piece ever again. Right, now this is looking good. That's looking nice. I'll give that a bit of a clean up, just with a bit of brake cleaner or something and a cloth, just to. I'm not gonna sand it or wire wool it or anything like that, because the size of this is very critical. It must be a tight fit into that bearing in a race on the new bearing. So I just need to clean that up, and then when I press that back in, I'll put a smear of grease on here, just to help that to seat in nicely into the bearing. Okay, so here we are. Hub carrier sprayed with Hamrite, which is still a bit sticky. This one here, I just put a little thin coat of silver Hamrite on that, just to make it a bit neater, just to cover up any rust that was there. I masked off with tape this area, these threaded studs, and all of this area here, just to keep that completely free of any paint or anything. So silver, nice gloss black. This is Plasticoat paint actually. I wish I'd used the silver Plasticoat on these actually, because this dried really quickly, and it's really nice shiny gloss black. So much better. Maybe not quite as good at rust prevention, I don't know. The Hamrite is like supposed to be really good for painting on rusty things. So the next thing to do is get the hydraulic press set up and get the new wheel bearing in. Okay, so this is a Bearmac wheel bearing. Other brands are available. That's what it looks like. It has this dark ring on one side. Okay, that's very, very important to get it the right way around, because that's the magnetic, sort of the magnets, basically the magnetic ring that the wheel speed sensor uses. So that has to go inwards. Okay, so that goes in, so that the speed sensor, which pokes through that hole there, is reading next to that magnetic ring. So the way in which we need to do this is I need to press that into there, and then press that into there. okay, not the other way around, because if we put that onto there first, when we try and then push that in, it's gonna damage the bearing. The outer race is just gonna break off. We're probably going to end up basically breaking this inner piece out in the same way as the outboard inner piece broke off when removing this. Okay, so disassembly, not quite the same order, or assembly is not quite the same order as disassembly. So disassembly, we pushed this out first, then that out. So the obvious thing is to think that you put that on there and then you push that into there. No, it's not that way round. Okay, so this needs to go into there. Okay, and I'm going to do that by putting this onto the hydraulic press, possibly this face downwards. I'm not sure if that's going to work. If I can't do it that way, then I will put this downwards and then use these special spreader plates. Now these are available from Machine Mart, they're probably available from Amazon and eBay as well. Really, really useful. Okay, so a number 9, I think it is. Let's just move 8 out of the way so I can grab 9. So 9 is the largest one. It does come with a kind of shaft thing there, but I didn't use that when I dismantled this, when I pushed this bearing out previously, well, the old bearing out. I used one of these, but I just used it direct. I tried putting this kind of handle on it, and it was moving about, and this is only aluminium. I was worried it was just gonna break off. So so I just hydraulic pressed straight down. I think it was actually number 7. Yeah, there's very slight marks on that. So number 7 was the one I used to push it out. Now you might be wondering, why did I not use a number 9 to go in and out? It's because on this side there is a rim, like a step, which means that the size number 9 can't fit in. So you have to use, I think it was 7 that I used before. Yeah, this one's got some marks and that on it where I used that to push out. And then for reassembly, I'm going to use 9. Okay, so 9 covers the entire bearing. Now, the really, really important thing here is that you're pushing on the outer race. Okay, so if you push on the inner one, this new bearing is going to break apart like the other ones did. Okay, so it's got to be pushing down on the outer race so that the inner piece here and the ball bearings and everything don't have any force exerted on them. So that goes on there. That is pushed carefully into there with a smear of grease, probably lithium grease rather than copper grease. Not sure, I'll try and work out which is the best grease to use there, but just a smear of grease there, because this is like a really tight interference fit, but a little bit of grease will just help that from going. It's got to be lined up ultra straight. Okay, so really dead straight, not skew whiff or wonky like that, because it's just going to jam and make a mess of the new bearing. So that's putting that one in. Then this needs to go in. Now the best way to do that is to have this facing downwards like that, and put the whole hub carrier on top, and then you push down only on the inner race. Okay, so it'll probably be spacer number 4 possibly. Yeah, there we go. Number 4. 5 might be too large. Yeah, well, I don't know, actually 5 might be better. Yeah, the important thing is that don't press on this magnetic ring, and you mustn't damage that. 5 actually 5 is the one. 5 is an exact fit. Okay, so 7 for getting the bearing out, 9 for going in, and 5 for pushing this and the hub carrier down onto there. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is push that down over this kind of shaft, but only using the inner piece there. If we start pressing down here, it's going to break apart the bearing. This inner race is going to come out, the magnetic piece is going to come apart and break out, and it's all just going to be ruined. Okay, so it's really, really important to press in the right places and in the right order as well. Okay, so that's what I need to do next. Couple of things to remember, really, really important. The back plate has to be fitted before this goes on. You put the bearing into there, then it's the back plate screwed on with its Torx, 4 Torx screws into here, because you can't get that on, because it's a complete ring, you can't get that on, unlike the front, which I think you can kind of maneuver in. This one must go on first, then this. Okay. Another thing to remember is that one of these little handbrake clip pins cannot be inserted once this is in position. One can, one can't, and I'm pretty sure it's the one that's next to the L or the R, depending on the left or right. So it's the one that is nearest to the sort of the hand, the side stamp there. Okay, so this one here, I'm pretty sure it's that hole. Yeah, because these holes are for the screw. Yeah, so that hole there, that needs that little tiny little sort of pin thing putting in from the other side. If I forget to do that, you can't get it in afterwards. Okay, so put the pin in sort of loose, push that on, screw that down, and then push this onto there. Okay, and with this in place, there should be no issues then with buckling this by pressing against it. When I tried on the first hub, on this original one, when I took it apart, I ruined another back plate because I actually tried to press down, and of course the bits of metal on the hydraulic press were pushing up here, pushing against the back plate, because I had no way of removing that beforehand, and kind of ruined it. So this one, whilst it's not in brilliant shape, it's a lot better condition than the other one. So just giving it a coat of paint just to make it look a bit better and keep the rust at bay. Now, you might be thinking, well, surely these are about 10 quid each, why don't I just buy one? They are quite cheap to buy if they're in stock, but there seems to be a world shortage of these at the moment, and you just can't get them anywhere. I've seen these only for sale at a couple of places, and they're over £100 each. £100 for a piece of pressed steel. I'm not going to spend that sort of money. I will fit this second-hand one with a coat of paint on it, and that'll do nicely. It'll be fine, so long as it's not warps, as long as it's not falling apart with rust. The important thing is that the handbrake mechanism can operate on here without sort of fouling. The shoes need to move. I think the shoes sit on these pieces here, so long as those are all in a reasonable condition, then the handbrake shoe will be able to operate. Okay, let's get the hydraulic press assembled and start pressing. Okay, so the hydraulic press is constructed and set up ready. I'm having a bit of a game getting this aligned right. I don't really want to push this down onto the bearing. I'd rather put the bearing there and press the bearing in, but trying to get this set up on these plates, it just wasn't stable. It wasn't stable. Now that actually, on this black metal bar, that actually sits quite nicely, because the bar seems to kind of hook in just behind here into a bit there, and that's actually pretty stable and is quite level. Now, the important thing is that the bearing goes in square, so I'll put a little bit of grease around in here, just a smear of grease, just to allow that to slide in. Make sure there's no dirt or debris in there. And then we'll get the spreader plate and just push that down in. I'll undo this and take that piece out and put a bigger adapter in instead of this black piece. Right, okay, that's pretty solid. Right, let's give this a go. Okay, so there's the bearing in position. There's a smear of grease inside the hole on the hub carrier. Got an assortment of pieces on here, adapters, and then that one there with a gap of about 1 inch there, which will get compressed very shortly, and hopefully that will push that in. Okay, slight change of plan. I was struggling to get the bearing to sit square, so I'm going to actually press downwards and then use this piece, which sits quite nicely there, to push the entire hub down onto the bearing. We'll see if that works. Okay, I think this is working now. So we've got 2 pieces there. I think it's the very largest, which I think is number 9, and then number 8. 9 is upside down, which sort of fits perfectly in, and then 8's this way up, just to give a bit of extra strength to it. And then because this is dead flat and this is the dead flat, that actually is going downwards. You can see there, it's moving very slowly, but the bearing is going into the housing. Right, that I think is all the way in. Oh dear, I hope I can get this out. Yep, there we go. Okay, right. Oh, we found some more rust, but the bearing is in. It's certainly in flush with the outside. I need to just brush out that rust there, but it looks like it can go a bit further. Actually, there's a bit of a gap here. Let's just have a look on the other side. Look at that, there we go. That's looking good. So what I need to do now is put a spacer piece underneath and repeat that so that it pushes the bearing in. Now, I'm not actually sure how far it goes in. I think it just goes right up to this seat here. I'm not sure. I'll get that dust out of there, and then we'll just kind of keep going until it won't go in any further. But I do think it needs to go further in than that. Okay, so what I've done here is put the largest number 9 spreader plate under there, which is exactly the same size as the bearing outer race. I want to make sure that that's not going to get pinched at all by the actual body of the hub carrier. And then here, because the number 9 was the one we were using in here, luckily the number 8, if it's fitted that way round, actually sits quite nicely in there on that sort of little step. Now it's not going to be touching very much metal, but it should be just enough. Now that the bearing is pretty much in there, it should slide nice and easily. So let's probably actually stack these up a bit, just to kind of spread the load a bit. There we go. Right, I'm just going to give that a gentle push. We'll just see if that bearing, what we're looking for really is the bearing going in probably about that much, so when this little edge here is flush with this, I think that's it. I don't think it's going to go in any further. Right, let's try that. is in. That's as hard as it will go. Right, let's open up the release. Get these out of here. I really hope that is it. Okay, it's still not quite up to the edge of that step. I just don't think it wants to go any further. Okay, I'll take this out and have a little look at it and just see if I reckon that will go any further. That was as hard in as it would go. This has gone in. You can see that step that was there is now up inside. That's that is seated in all the way around. Okay, I might have to just give it one last press just to sort of make sure that really is definitely in there. Okay, so I gave that one last press. I put the other piece of metal in here, so that's extra high. I lifted this up a little bit. I don't know if the hydraulic ram was reaching the end of its travel, but it moved a bit further. I think that is now in. It's up against that step. There's a very small gap, but I think the step actually sort of slopes back slightly, so you can see, if I try and zoom that, where the speed sensor is, you can see where that goes back. It's difficult to see actually, but you can see there it is actually touching against. Just if I get a screwdriver and point, just see if I can point with this. Just there, where that goes back, that is hard against that. So that is in there. Let's have a look at the other side. Okay, there we go. Now the important thing is, what's that? I think that's just a bit of paint or something. Yeah, it's just a bit of paint. The important thing is that the circlip can go in. Okay, so that's really dictates how far back this needs to go. It's enough to expose that groove for the clip, and it looks like I can just about get that clip in there. Okay, so I'm going to put that in now, and then we need to come on and do this bush here. Okay, so this is the circlip which came out of one of the old hubs. It's not in pristine condition, there's a little bit of corrosion with it, but it's springy. It's not too bad. A lot of wheel bearings actually come with not only a new circlip but a hub nut as well. This one didn't, the Bearmac one doesn't, you just get the bearing. Just wanted to make sure that actually turned. That's nice and tight there. That's turning with no play at all. So, right, I'm going to pop this bearing back, I'm going to pop this circlip back in now. Hoping it's just a case of squeezing it up, putting it in there. There we go, look at that, one-handed. That's in. That's in there. I'll put a smear of grease around that to just stop that from rusting. Good, right, I need to get this one done now to find my new trailing arm bush. Okay, so here is a new trailing arm bush, and I'm going to put that into that hole. I'm a little worried about pressing in the middle of that. The centre part is aluminium, and then it's sort of connected to this outer ring by black rubber. So there is a possibility that if this doesn't slide in easily, then that centre part could tear itself out. So I do need to be careful here. Might need to rig something to press on the outer rim only. I'm not sure. I'll give it a go. I'll put a little bit of grease around this hole here and we'll have to see what happens. Okay, so what I've done is compressed that. The aluminium centerpiece was sticking out proud from the top of this. It's now been pushed down. I really hope it isn't actually being damaged. So the good news is that is actually slowly going in. I will need to move this across so that this is over this hole so that the aluminium piece can poke through there. And I think that's going in. Okay, so that is actually held there now by the press. That's going in. If we have a look underneath, you can actually see that piece there is coming through. Now, I don't think any of the outer piece needs to protrude through. That should be the same thickness as this piece of metal here. So I'm going to press this until this touches this, and then we know that that's fully in. Want to go any further. So I think what's happening is the outer bit's poking out the bottom. I'm just going to loosen this off and have a quick look. Yeah, there we go. So that is flush with that metal there. Now on the other side, that's actually still sticking out a bit proud there. So what I'd like to try and do is equalise that up so that it's sticking out very slightly top and bottom. I don't think it really matters because the clearance really will be around the centre aluminium piece, but it would just be nice if the outer was sitting evenly in the hole on the hub carrier. There we go, that's in there. Okay, so it's sticking out very slightly on each side. So it is safe to press on this middle bit, it just sort of moves down, but you do need to use an adapter plate which will then engage onto this outer ring. You can't just push through with a narrow attachment, that will rip this out of the middle, but it's okay to compress that down to then press against this. That's what I did, and that is in there. That's it. Right, so next thing is to, before I fit the hub, I need to put the back plate on with one of those little pin things. Then the hub is pressed in, or what we'll probably end up doing is pressing this down onto the hub by acting on these inner races here. Okay, this is taking shape nicely now. So there's the back plate on. I've done up the 4 Torx bolts, Torx screws. That's a T30, can't read that. 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there is the pin that I was mentioning. So you have to insert that one beforehand. This one here, there's a big gap underneath it. Okay, so this one you can get in afterwards, but this one here you can't. Okay, so you have to put that in loose beforehand, and it's the one nearest the L or the R stamped onto the shield. Okay, so this is coming together nicely now. The next thing to do now is to press in the hub. go and find the hub. Right, the car is filling up with old bits of Land Rover. Right, so here is the hub. That is the piece that has the wheel studs on it, and that needs to be pressed into there. Now the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to put that way round and press this whole thing down onto it. The important thing is that we press it only on this inner inboard race here. Okay, so there, you must press there, not on the magnetic ring. So that you push there, and that will push that down onto there. It'll be easier doing it that way up, trying to put this the other way and then press this down into that whilst having something supported under there. That's going to be difficult. So that will go like so. On the hydraulic press now, I'll need to lower this down one notch on the pegs here. Possibly even two actually. Need to get a bit of clearance there, and then we'll need one of these spacers. Actually, that one there, that adapter. Let's move that out of the way. That actually may be suitable as it is. I don't think we need one of the spreader plates. Oh no, that's actually a little bit too small, slightly too small. So that's number 5. Yeah, that's a good fit. There we go. So I'll use this probably with that pressing down on it. This is steel, but these things are aluminium, so do need to spread the load a bit on them. Otherwise they'll bend or break or generally get dented and damaged. Right, let's get this set up. Press that down onto the hub, and that will be it for today. And then tomorrow, jack the car up, take the wheel off, and remove the old assembly and fit this in its place with the handbrake shoes, the disc, wheel spacers, handbrake cable, speed sensor, and this here on the bottom of the strut. Now this hole here is a large, I think it's an M12 bolts. Now Haynes recommend that you change these bolts whenever you remove them. You fit new ones each time. I think it's just because it's got some thread lock on it. But these are done up to some crazy sort of torque setting. So I happen to have one there. That's an LR2 and I think it's the same bolt that's used on the front as well. So all 4 struts have something like this at the bottom of them, and the bolt goes in there. So I have that left over from when I did my lift spacers, so I'll fit that in here. And yeah, hopefully tomorrow, hopefully the weather will be like this. It's been quite rainy today actually, heavy showers, and the heavy showers are forecast again tomorrow, which are just so annoying when trying to work on the car when you don't have a garage or a workshop doing this outside. So hopefully the weather will be a bit better tomorrow. We'll get up early and crack on. Okay, after a bit of wrestling with this, I've got that set up now. So that is on here, which is nice and level. That is greased up, and that is now aiming at the centre of the bearing. through that inner race, and then we've got the number 5 spreader plate underneath this adapter here. Taking care not to press on the magnetic ring. Okay, so there's a possibility that this may try to push the wheel studs out. If so, I'll have to put something under here, some of these underneath here, to give that centerpiece something to stand on. But well, let's give it a go. We'll see what moves first. Right, it does seem to be moving. I think that's working. It's very, very slow. That is working. Wheel studs are not coming out. Right, I'll keep going until that's fully in. Okay. Well, one thing I noticed straight away is that that is turning on the hub, which can only be a good sign, because that's kind of how it will work in the real world. Right, let's take these things apart. Get that out of there. Oh, no, there we go. Okay, I think that is in far enough. There's this slightly darker sort of ring you can see here. It's got a kind of a curved edge to it. What I'll do is I'll compare. No, I can't compare against the other hub because I've already bashed the centerpiece out. So I think that is in. I think that's as far as it goes. Let's get this. Yeah. God, it's getting heavy. This, as we're adding all these pieces, it's getting heavier and heavier. Well, there we go. There we go. It's stiff, but it is all brand new bearing and that, so that's in there. That is in there. I think it probably just needs a couple of miles to kind of loosen everything up a bit, but yeah, I mean it's there. And the great thing is there's absolutely no play in that at all. The two that I bought on eBay had noticeable play. You could actually hold the hub and you could rock it, so the existing bearings were very worn. Yeah, I don't want to damage the edge of this. I spent ages with the pliers bending that back out. These edges here just get bent in so easily. Okay, right, that is looking good. That's now ready for me to jack the car up and remove the old unit, because everything else that we fit to this will be transplanted across from the existing setup. The brake disc, the handbrake shoes, all the springs and clips and things like that, cables, everything else get fitted to this. Caliper, carrier, the trailing arm goes onto there. So that's it. That's it for today. Very, very pleased with that. It's been a difficult day's work, but I've never done this before. So there's just kind of figuring everything out for myself, thinking about it very carefully and slowly, and making sure that I do it right. Good. Okay, that's it for today. I'll carry on filming tomorrow. Okay, that is the end of part 1. This video series will continue in part 2. My trolley jack is not working, so I've just tried hammering a screwdriver into there, and snap the end off the blade of the screwdriver. Oh, come on. Yeah. Come on. Oh, dear. I can't remove the handbrake cable. I knew this would happen. Come on. Come on. Well, rain has stopped play. Had to just leave this for a bit. It's absolutely chucking it down. Heavy showers today, the worst kind of weather for working on the car outside. You just get all your tools and everything out and it chucks it down. It's so annoying.